No, just leave me. I just want to sit here. I think I'm going crazy.
Preparing your defense already, huh?
No, I mean, I went way up top of this building, 75, 80 stories up, and I'm up there, and I can't believe what I saw. I saw a body up there. There was somebody murdered up there.
What are you talking about?
Listen to me. I see this body. I don't know what it is. I think it's a woman, because there's a bracelet on it that's all been thrown away. I never seen anything like that before in my life.
Are you back on something?
I knew you'd say that. And I knew they'd think that. So I ran again. I ran twice in one day, I ran. And I kept running until I couldn't run anymore. Until my side hurt so much I couldn't run anymore. And then I go to sleep. I go to sleep under a goddamn staircase. I don't sleep, because I try to sleep. I can't sleep.
Feel better?
I stink, and I just want to cry. I haven't cried since I was a little kid. I just want to cry.
Go ahead, it's okay.
No, but I'm supposed to be a man. Christ, I don't know what I'm supposed to be. Everything I touch on the outside turns into shit. Maybe I am an institutionalized person. Maybe I can't make it outside the slammer. I belong inside there, like an animal in a cage.
Right. We could have those conjugal visits once every 4 months if we got married. Why do I stay with the Dominics junkie?
I don't know why.
A modern-day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Layer Kick. A Cohen brothers end up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel. Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeakquel. There's so many new ways to revisit Sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Of all the characters in the James Bond franchise, it's possible that the most beloved is MI6's quartermaster, though that title's a bit of a mouthful, so he's just known as Q. Typically, when Q is on screen, he's demonstrating all of the cool tech that we'll see 007 use throughout the movie. Q does not appear in any of the books, though Q Division is usually mentioned. In the films, the role of Q has been played by many actors. Most recently, Q has been played by Ben Whishaw in the Daniel Craig Bond films. Just before Craig's reign as 007, John Cleese portrayed Q, and also R, Q's assistant, but that was mostly a joke from that era's Bond, Pierce Brosnan, and The World Is Not Enough. That film's Q was played by Desmond Llewellyn, who held the Q position for many iterations of Bond, totaling 17 007 films, and a myriad of television commercials advertising products as Q, like electric toothbrushes, camcorders, beer, and Hyundai cars, though they never made an appearance in the Bond films as 007's tricked-out primary mode of transportation. Prior to Desmond Llewellyn accepting the role of Q, actor Peter Burton filled the quartermaster role, though he is only referred to as the Armorer. Even though his role in Dr. No was small, Burton did make appearances as other characters in future Bond films. He was an RAF officer in 1965's Thunderball, and also as a secret agent in 007's satire spoof 1967's Casino Royale. Though it's not officially part of the 007 film canon, as it would have needed approval from the Broccoli family, Casino Royale holds a place in the 007 lore and was even nominated for its original song, The Look of Love, written by Burt Bacharach and Hal David and performed by Dusty Springfield. Casino Royale also features an all-star cast including John Huston as M, who also co-directed, David Niven as Bond, Orson Welles as Le Chef, Woody Allen as Jimmy Bond, OG Charles Boyer, the OG stands for Original Gaslighter, and comedy juggernaut Peter Sellers. Best known for his roles in What's New Pussycat, Dr. Strangelove, and as Inspector Clouseau in the Pink Panther series, Sellers took the comedy world by storm, influencing comedy legends like Monty Python, Rowan Atkinson, and Spinal Tap's Michael McKean, Christopher Guest, and Harry Shearer. Sellers was also the subject of a 1994 biography and 2004 biopic, both called The Life and Death of Peter Sellers. The made-for-TV film took home the Golden Globe for Best Miniseries or Television Film, and Best Actor, miniseries or television film, for Jeffrey Rush's portrayal of Sellers, a performance that also won him an Emmy. The film also features Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, Emily Watson, and Charlize Theron, who turned heads at the film's premiere as she walked the red carpet with Sellers' second wife, Britt Eklund, portrayed by Theron in the biopic. Along with the film's cast at its premiere at the 57th Cannes Film Festival, photographers snapped shots of the many celebs there to see the film. Oh look, it's Mark Hamill with Marilu York. Who's that? Oh, just Eve Bayou's Lynn Whitfield. And check it out, David Carradine is here too. Born in 1936 to mother Ardenelle and father John Carradine, a member of Cecil B. DeMille's Whack Pack, David thrived in the acting world along with brothers Keith and Robert. But while they were off being singer-songwriters and nerds, David became well known for his martial arts prowess, showing off his skills in Kung Fu, Kill Bill, and Lone Wolf McQuade. Carradine had a prolific career from 1964 until his untimely death in 2009, though he had many posthumous releases. But before all that, Carradine was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1960, drawing pictures for training aids. But before he was court-martialed for shoplifting, Carradine met future director Larry Cohen, who would call Carradine up in 1982 to appear in a low-budget guerrilla-style film along with Michael Moriarty, Richard Roundtree, and a giant winged serpent. Greetings, Starfighters. This is Ruined Childhoods, and in this episode we celebrate Larry Cohen's absolutely wild cult classic, Q, the Winged Serpent, the story of a 2-bit criminal, ritual sacrifice, and a giant beast named Quetzalcoatl, but that's a bit of a mouthful, so we just call her Q. Dan, I have a Q for you. Are you Team Winged Serpent or Team Winged Serpent?
Team Winged Serpent.
Ooh.
All the way.
I feel like I've been in my mind saying it both ways over the past couple of weeks as we've been preparing for this episode, and I can't make up my mind.
John, I actually thought about this. I kid you not. I thought about this as I was thinking about it throughout the day and preparing to record tonight. I thought to myself, I said, this is a winged serpent. This isn't a winged serpent. It is winged, and that is how I will pronounce it. So I'm so glad you asked, because I definitely devoted brain space to that today.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked too. Yeah, what a wild movie. Dan,
Wow.
Tell me what you thought about Q.
Well, when you say like guerrilla style, that was absolutely what I thought as I was watching certain things, and I was like, they totally didn't have a permit to shoot.
No, I don't think they had any permits.
It's like, how did they get in there? Should I give the synopsis so we can fly,
go
so we
for
can
it.
spread our wings?
Go for it.
By the way, welcome back if you're a returning listener / viewer, and welcome, and we hope you stay, to those joining us for the first time, because you were like, oh my God, somebody is actually devoting the time to Q, the Winged Serpent.
Yeah.
And indeed we have, and time well spent as far as I'm concerned. So here's the rundown. New York City is plagued by a series of ritualistic murders and a killer flying monster. But the NYPD's only hope for preventing any more death is Jimmy Quinn, the dingleberry on the butthole of New York's criminal underworld. As of the aforementioned dingleberry is Michael Moriarty.
Mm-hmm.
We've got David Carradine as the cop investigating all of this.
Right.
And we have, who am I?
Well, Richard Roundtree as another
Roundtree,
cop
thank
who
you, yes.
is involved with the investigation, but is more investigating a different case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the details are a bit hazy throughout.
Sure.
But,
who cares?
No, exactly. Who cares? And of course it stars this wonderful puppet. I think this is the movie. If it hadn't come out a couple of years beforehand, I would say this is the movie that they were making on that soundstage when Pee Wee Herman rides his bike through in Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
Twisted Sisters there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, this movie, so I watched it last week on a Wednesday, and I was like, oh my God, I have to watch this again as quickly as possible. So on Amazon Prime, it has it listed as having director's commentary. So I was like, oh, I'll watch it with the commentary. There's no director's commentary. It's just the movie. And so I was just like, well, I'm just going to watch it again. That's fine. And then So that was a Wednesday and then a Thursday. And then that Friday, I went on a Zoom call with a bunch of, with our brother Scott and a bunch of our friends, mostly from our hometown. And every Friday night they get together on Zoom, pick a movie, and then all kind of press play together. And I pop on there every opportunity I have, which isn't as frequently as I would like. And I'm always thrilled to be asked what I would, choose to kind of put on. And for some reason, they trust me. And I said, look, I'm not saying that we should do this because some people have already mentioned some other movies that I'm totally down for. But I watched the most bananas movie ever, and I know you all would love it. And we kind of just did like a random selection, and that happened to be the one. And it was amazing because I had watched it the 2 other times by myself, to witness other people watching it for the first time, and also to like kind of hear where their heads were at during it, because they had theories during it where I was just like, oh, that's interesting that you would have thought X, Y, and Z, knowing what actually is going on, but, understanding what other people are bringing to it. And, just what a joy that was. And so I watched it 3 days in a row. I considered watching it again today. And ultimately, I ended up going to the theater because, and I texted you about this, but a local theater here in Portland called Cinemagic was showing Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and I never saw it in the theater, and I was like, it's been a while since I've seen it. It's never on a streaming service.
Very rarely.
Yeah, I want to watch it because it's been such a long time, and man, it was so much fun, and watching that movie with a bunch of people, laughing at, certain times together was really fun. And also it's like, there's a very small bit of it that does take place in New York, and there's a big like helicopter flyover shot that has the Chrysler building in it.
Oh yeah.
And of course, Robert Downey Jr. plays like a 2-bit criminal. And so I was just like, ooh, this has Q DNA in it.
Yeah. And so John, speaking of the Chrysler building, have I ever told you I have actually been in the top of the Chrysler building?
Okay. What?
So New Year's Eve, and forgive me for not having confirmed the date, but I have the pictures. So you know what? I think I have the pictures on Facebook, and I have not logged onto Facebook in quite some time. So I can confirm it, but I want to say it was like New Year's 2011. And we were with friends of ours, and we were all living in New York.
Okay.
And it was friends of ours knew someone who worked in this like shipping office, or I think it was a ship, like ship design, like boat architecture.
Cool.
Office. Because there were a lot of pictures of different ships. I remember that. And it was in the top of the Chrysler building. The famous, as you see, the, kind of layered.
Right.
Ovular shapes. And
was there that security guard up there that was keeping an eye on things?
The security guard with the oversized shirt that was like definitely rented from the costume place like that morning.
Best case scenario.
I recognize that guy. Was he like Marla Hooch's dad in A League of Their Own?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Yeah.
What a hitter.
I was I should learn his name, so I'm not always like
totally. And I recognize him from other things too.
Right. Yeah. But to me, that's who he always is. And the top of it was all very finished. There were no giant nests up there, right. No eggs. There was no David Carradine with a machine gun.
No, my goodness.
No, none of that. It was a very, very classy evening. And I mean, we really just kind of like went up there because we could, and we had access to something that's not like necessarily a tourist. Like tourists can't just
No,
walk in there.
absolutely. That's
It's
so
like
cool.
You look out the windows, and it's like that's where you are. You're where he was in.
Where Michael Moriarty is just like, check out the view. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
He takes a moment to just be like, look at how cool this is.
Yeah. He's not afraid at all. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is terrifying.
So there's
He's out
so
in
much
the
about
open.
this movie that there's this lore behind it, you know, about how Larry Cohen, the director, you know, threw this movie together very quickly. He was set to direct this movie, I, the Jury, and your camera's not angled properly to do a visual demonstration, but Alan King is in it, and it's over there somewhere.
Yeah,
But-
it's I'm like that's stuck on the wall.
That's stuck in the wall. I want to say like Paul Sorvino is in it. Anyway,
Oh, I've met him as well.
well, there you go. And so Larry Cohen was, I guess, booted from that movie. I think that he had all of these things kind of lined up and was like, well, screw it, I'm gonna make something, and was able to lock down the location of the Chrysler Building, and probably that's the only one. Maybe the Empire State Building shots,
Like out in front.
out in front, but also like I know that. Okay, so the first scene, which is an incredible first scene of a
Yes.
movie,
Yes.
it's just this woman who's working in the Empire State Building, and she gets a call, and there's a window washer out, and you can tell from her conversation that there's this window washer that just like makes eyes at her and washes that window like every day, and is just like really, really annoying, and wouldn't you know it, suddenly loses his head somehow. And she has this incredible scream. She's fantastic. Like everything about this. But
She's great. The dialogue is
Yeah.
great.
but allegedly the window washer was an actual Empire State Building window washer. And so I wonder if like they said to that guy, like, hey, if you can get us in there, then we can
Oh.
give you a role in the movie, you know, something like that. Because that's a location that, how would they have gotten that?
Well, yeah, and I didn't get the impression that on the one hand, I didn't get the impression that they actually shot the office inside the Empire State Building.
I don't
Though-
know, because that dude was an actual Empire State Building window washer, allegedly.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Now that you mention that, and
Yeah.
there could have definitely been like it would, and people could have been like, hey, like, Cohen could have been like, you know, is there an empty office that like no one's gonna notice, no one's gonna care.
Right, yeah. And we'll build a movie, we'll build a scene around it, essentially.
Yeah.
And what a great scene. What a great way to open up a movie. It's so much fun.
It's
And
a great start.
yeah, and then
Yes.
when we're introduced, by the way, Michael Moriarty like blew me away.
Wonderful performance here, star making.
We'll talk plenty about his performance, but like, wow, what he brought to this movie, I've never seen anybody ever do in a movie before. The way he moves, the way he speaks, and understanding that this movie was thrown together very quickly, I feel like there's so much of Michael Moriarty as a person, you know, rather than like the character of Jimmy Quinn as, you know, a character. There's so much of it that, you know, Michael Moriarty is bringing to it. I do feel like they were trying to do more than what made sense, like what actually came through. Like they were really trying to build up this whole thing about how he's like scared of all these things, but I don't feel like that comes through so much. But like he keeps on talking about it, but it's like, okay, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't really get that impression so
Yeah.
much.
No.
Yeah.
Not so much.
He's just a weirdo.
Right. He's just like we first meet him when he's gonna be like the getaway driver
Right.
for this bank robbery, and he has this whole thing about like I don't carry a gun.
Well, he hasn't been working for a while, so these criminals know that he is desperate for work. So they basically are just kind of like, I guess we'll bring this. We need one other guy to do this diamond heist at
Yeah.
Neil Diamonds, the best name for a jewelry store ever, which you have to imagine was an actual jewelry store because it's
Well,
not
yeah.
like they had the budget to like, do
No.
set dressing.
No. It absolutely looks like the same thing. Like you would, and John, you and I have both worked on film sets to varying degrees. The ones that I've worked on have been much more indie. You've had the opportunity to work on some pretty big film sets, but we've both worked in the with those guerrilla crews.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I could definitely picture how it worked, where like they were like, okay, this jewelry store is gonna close for an hour, so we've got an hour, we've got to do this shot just for the outside.
So I've got some thoughts about that also. That we never go inside with them.
No.
We do see the name of the store. So the way I imagine it went down is that they said to them, hey, we're making this movie. Would it be okay if we use the exterior of our store if we get a shot showing some of the merchandise that you have? Because there's a close-up shot just going across some like diamond rings while we hear what's going on inside.
Right. Yeah. I know. And that's the impression that I got. That it was that was kind of like the deal, was that the people in the store were like, either it was kind of like, all right, we're closed Mondays. So you could do it then. Or like, it was something like they did not take over the entire business for a week shooting that. It was
10 minutes in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny because you get this all like, Quinn doesn't like guns, and he's just doing this. And the next thing you know, you hear bang, 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 and he's running out of the jewelry store.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know who pulled any triggers for anything, but he's the one that's walking out with the diamonds, which he very quickly loses. And I think that we are supposed to think that he's like afraid of the traffic and he's got anxiety and just bolts and immediately calls his lawyer to say, I'm coming by, which is such a weird thing to do. And it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this movie, and I feel like I ended up watching a lot of it more than once, just because of the number of times that I went and was like, oh wait, what did I miss?
Yeah.
What is happening now? Was this explained, or is this just happening?
Oh, like when he plays piano at the bar that's closed?
I mean, kind of, sort of, not really. That I kind of got, but I was kind of like, wait a second, can he play? Is he good?
You know what it reminded me of? Do you know the actor and comedian H. John Benjamin?
Yes.
He does the voice for Archer, Bob's Burgers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he put out an album, I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago, that was called I Don't Know How to Play the Piano. And it is a jazz album where he is playing piano with a jazz band, but he doesn't know how to play the piano. And there's no dialogue or anything. It's just a straight up like jazz album where there's an upright bass and a drummer, and then he's trying to fake his way through playing the piano for an entire album.
Wow.
It's like Andy Kaufman level comedy.
Yeah, that totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I don't know if that's what quit, but it's because he starts and you're like, does he even know what he's doing? And then he starts playing, and it's like he's got like Randy Newman talent here.
Well, but also it's like the lyrics that he's singing, which clearly he's like making up on the spot, are all about how like demons come to him in his dreams.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that comes up again later when we see him like waking up from, falling asleep somewhere. And it's like, he's trying to insert so much more into this about how he has these, like a sleep paralysis demon or something, and it's like an unaddressed issue for him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, there's something like that going on. And then it ends up, I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, I wasn't even sure how we got to like the weird, like the guy wearing the Winged Serpent suit
Right.
with the ritual.
So
killing.
yeah, there's a shot. It just comes up out of nowhere, and you see somebody's skin getting flayed off, and we don't know what's going on there. And I actually like the way that that's kind of left pretty ambiguous. And then David Carradine is just like, I think that this and the people whose heads are coming off, I think that this is somehow connected.
But I didn't even like when at the end, when they have the other guy, when the Bruce Carradine, I assume that there's a relation, kind of looks like a cross between like an older Richard Gere and Roman Polanski.
I think he's a half brother.
Is he a half Carradine?
He's well, yeah. I looked up the whole Carradine family tree at one point, and I think that he is David Carradine's half brother.
Okay. Got it. Understood. Yeah. Anyway, like when there's him and then there's that other guy who I also recognized from stuff, and he's wearing the like green, like kind of like his mom like did a like really good job making him a Halloween costume.
Right.
That green like dragon thing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And was he the one controlling the serpent? Were these his sacrifices to the serpent?
So right. So
I watched the movie, I swear.
My best understanding of it, having watched it 3 times, is that in order to like reawaken this like long dormant serpent, this winged god, there are these followers of Quetzalcoatl who sacrifice themselves by means of having their skin removed, or I guess their heart or whatever, and they go into it willingly. And now that there is, Quetzalcoatl's out there, I think that as it continues on, maybe that's how more eggs are created. Maybe it keeps it alive. I don't know, or it's just kind of, showing their commitment to Quetzalcoatl. I don't know. It's never like fully explained.
Well, I guess. And like, why is all of this happening now? Because it's not like it's been going on for a long time.
Right.
There's that. The other thing that I had to like go back and look for, and like, did I miss something? Was the undercover cop dressed as who's dressed as the mime?
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay, we're gonna come back to him. Okay, great. So, I love that guy.
Yeah, and for anybody who's watching this as in its video form on YouTube or on Spotify, behind me you can see I have a little graphic here, and of course we feature our mime friend here. So going back to, I guess, almost the beginning, there's so many things I want to talk about. So there's the first scene where we meet Michael Moriarty, and he's at this Chinese restaurant with these goons, and they're talking about pulling off this heist or whatever. I love every single moment of this. I love the fact that he's like bogarting all of the cashew chicken, and they're just like, hey, pass that over here. And like, you instantly are drawn to Jimmy Quinn, and you're just like, oh my God, who is this spazzy weirdo? I love him. The things that he says are so incredible when he's at this bar, kind of auditioning to be a piano player there because his girlfriend works there, and like on the slide told him that they were looking for musicians. I don't know. and by chance, David Carradine's character happens to be, there getting a daytime beverage.
Yeah.
Even though there's literally nobody else in there. And as Quinn is leaving, Carradine goes to him and he's just like, sounded all right to me. And I just love how Michael Moriarty goes, oh yeah, what the fuck do you know?
Oh, right. Yeah. Love that.
What a weird I feel like any normal person in that situation would be like, hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. But he's just like, the fuck do you know? Which is great how that kind of comes back at the end too. But it's so good. I wrote down a lot of other Michael Moriarty lines that were just so amazing.
Bring him out. Let's go.
So after the first time where he sees the egg and he sees the body of the one of the victims of Q, which is this woman who Q snatched up as she was sunbathing on the rooftop of her, New York apartment building.
Of course, we have to have some gratuitous nudity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he's shaken by this. By the way, I love the way that they justify him getting up there, which is, okay, the robbery went bad. He calls his lawyer and says to the lawyer's assistant or whatever, well, I'm coming by. The lawyer is towards the top of the Chrysler building. So he's in the Chrysler building and he's feeling really twitchy and nervous because he just got finished with this botched robbery. And he's worried that people are out to get him. And so the security guard there is kind of poking around. And for some reason, he just decides, I'm not going to wait for my lawyer to come out. I am going to go into the stairwell and just start going up.
Yep.
And so he goes up and he's in this, the very top of the Chrysler building. And he's climbing up ladders, trying to get away from this rent-a-cop. And that's where he discovers the egg and the dead body and everything. He discovers the dead body as he's decided, you know what? I'm going to take a piss right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When you got to go, you got to go.
When you got to go, you got to go. So he's trying to piss. This dead body falls on him. And he tries to steal a bracelet off of it first. And then eventually, squirrels back to his girlfriend's place. And that's where he is really shook up, and he just goes into this whole thing where he's just like, I want to cry. I haven't cried since I was a little kid, but I'm supposed to be a man, and a man doesn't cry. And he's just kind of going through this whole journey. And I loved watching when I watched that with my buddies on Zoom. After that, it might have actually been our brother Scott was just like, what a monologue. What an incredible bit. And I was so happy that everybody else was just like, what is this guy doing? And I'm loving it. It's so good. So I want to fast forward a little bit because a couple of the other lines have to do with some stuff that we haven't covered yet.
Okay.
So since he has gone up there, he's seen this egg, and I believe he has also caught wind of this monster that's there because there's the dead body and everything. So as the goons that did the robbery with him are trying to find him to get the diamonds because they think that he just took the diamonds for himself, leads them to the top of the Chrysler building, knowing that there's a monster that's going to kill them. So it's his way of trying to shake off the criminals and by saying, I'm going to show you where I hid the diamonds.
Yeah.
Of course, they get eaten by Q.
Of course.
And since he knows, it turns out he discovers that he's the only one that knows the whereabouts of this creature. And when David Carradine and Richard Roundtree and all them are trying to put the pieces together, he leverages that information to try to get, money and pardons and things like that. Mm-hmm. So and we can go back and talk more about that. But some of the lines,
piano at a decent bar.
Yeah, I know, right? He doesn't ask for just something normal like that. But so yeah, he goes, I want to be pardoned for the crime that I got picked up for, which is so basically those goons called the cops and said, hey, that guy who robbed that jewelry store is this dude. And so he's like, I want to be pardoned for that and any other crimes that you don't know about yet.
Yeah.
And so he says, I'm just so he's like, you know how when Nixon was pardoned for all of that stuff, he's like, I'm just asking for a Nixon-like pardon.
A blanket pardon. Yeah. No, he calls it the Nixon pardon, right?
A Nixon-like pardon. And it's just like, that's pretty brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
And then he's talking about how he wants $1 million tax-free. And he goes, I've never paid tax in my life and I don't plan to start now.
I wonder how much he improvised.
Oh, I don't think that there was much of a script to this thing. But you just kind of like pull the string on Moriarty and let him go.
Like how much of this stuff was just like stuff he had like worked on in like acting class, like that monologue.
Yeah. At one point, and I just wrote this down, I don't remember exactly what this was for, but Powell, who is Richard Roundtree's character, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, Sergeant Powell. Yeah. So he has a chip on his shoulder about cops because when Quinn was young, he was kind of set up and he was falsely accused of a crime and was put in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And so he's very skeptical about all cops. And Richard Roundtree, Sergeant Powell, has it in for Quinn and like really wants to stick it to him. And since Quinn has the upper hand here, he goes, I'm pissing all over you and there's nothing you can do about it. I love that. There's a moment where his girlfriend is kicking him out of her apartment, and he just goes, I'll send for my things. And if you can't wait, throw them in the fucking incinerator. And it's like, what? Yeah. And the delivery is also good on these. There's a moment where they're going up to the Chrysler building and to get Q and Carradine is basically like everyone's going up there with like guns and he's basically saying it's like you're going up there with us because if there's a monster there, like you got to be there too. And he hands him a gun and Quinn just goes, why is everyone trying to give me revolvers? And it's such a funny thing to call out because it's true. People just keep on giving him guns.
Right.
Oh my God. Dan, I could talk about this all night. I love this movie. It's so good.
I need to watch it a couple more times.
Yeah. I think that, for any new listeners, Dan and I are brothers and, we haven't talked about this, but over this coming summer, our family is all going to be getting together. And so I think that when the kids are asleep, we just need to put on Q for everybody. Although Scott's already seen it and our parents are not going to love it, but I don't care. We need to watch it.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Oh,
yeah.
There's
definitely.
one other like soliloquy that I wrote down. So, at the end, there is this person that's behind all of these ritualistic sacrifices that are going on who finds Quinn because Quinn is the one who put an end to everything and pointed the cops in the direction of Q.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's trying to kill Quinn, and in order for it to be a sacrifice to Q, he needs Quinn to like say this prayer, and Quinn goes, piss on your prayer, I ain't saying no goddamn prayers, never did, never will, fucking priest told me to say my prayers, I didn't say my fucking prayers, cops told me to say my prayers, I ain't saying your prayers. It's so good. And he's like held at knife point the whole time. It's just like, this guy is doing so much and I love it.
Wow. Yeah. He really does carry the movie.
It's in a movie that is also starring David Carradine and Richard Roundtree, like huge, I'd say at this point they're stars.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, Rich Shaft is
Shaft, yeah.
like a decade before this.
Yeah.
And Kung Fu throughout the 70s.
Yeah.
And I forget exactly when Lone Wolf McQuade was, but
I think it might have been the same year,
might have been.
82. But but I mean, he's no slouch. He's been acting for decades at this point.
Yeah.
And David Carradine also, he brings a lot of fun to this. There's a scene where he's with his wife or girlfriend or whatever, and he's reading all these books that he got about Quetzalcoatl and these like ancient gods, and she's just like, they're just kind of like messing with each other about what he's reading and stuff, and she's like, all right, time to put it away, come to bed, and he kind of just goes off to like the bathroom, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna go take my birth control pill. And it's just like a throwaway line, but there's something about it that makes it feel like he's just a guy.
Right.
And I love that. It's such a weird thing to say. It's just like a not good joke, but it works.
Right. Yeah. He's just like this weird random dude.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so the actor who plays the I guess the cultist here, he's the character he's credited as is Kahsa, Kahsa.
Okay.
Shelley Desai.
Okay.
Who was in let's see, he was Escape from LA, Here Comes the Boom. He has a very signature look. Like when you see him, you recognize him.
He's kind of got like buggy eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, you've seen him in things before, and then you look at his IMDb and it's like, oh yeah, like he's
Dude
been
acts
in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's come back to it. The mime.
The mime.
So
yes.
Before we find out who the person is who's performing these sacrifices, there's this kind of like undercover operation at like one of the, like, maybe it's like the medical university.
Columbia.
Was it Columbia?
Columbia.
Well, yeah. I know that's where Carradine goes to talk to the like theology professor.
Right. Well, aren't they up at Columbia? Or maybe it's not Columbia, and he says like, "Oh, I knew he had an office at Columbia, and he's also got an office here."
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's
this
so
is
Richard
one of those
Roundtree.
Parts where I went back.
So Roundtree is kind of organizing this undercover operation to find people who would have access to things like scalpels, which is kind of like probably a lot of people have access to, scalpels.
Right.
And stuff. But they somehow put connect the dots, and there's this undercover cop who for some reason is a mime. There's no reason why this guy needs to be a mime.
Wearing an Amadeus t-shirt, and because this movie came out 2 years before the movie Amadeus, it's like the Broadway show.
I feel like that is such a New York thing, is to have t-shirts of Broadway shows. I don't know if that's as much of a, like I guess when Hamilton and stuff, but like I feel like Les Mis shirts were just so ubiquitous for quite a long time, especially on like the East Coast, and Cats, the eyes and everything, and that
Definitely.
Amadeus shirt also.
Yes.
So, but this guy did not need to be a mime, and they made him a mime.
That seemed to be like it seemed to be like this cop's choice, and it was kind of like he's like, this is my chance.
Well, what's also funny is like, Sergeant Powell and the mime then go into a car to follow this dude who they're suspecting, and there's a moment where it's just like, hey, did you make any money? And he like empties the change out of his like hat, and he must have been a good enough mime to actually get people's money.
Well, that was why I had to go back, because I was like, wait a second, is this like, where did this mime come from? And was this guy in it earlier? Am I just not recognizing him? Like, the cops seem to know him. Is he an informant? Like, is he a mime who like works for the cops because they're like, oh, he sees a lot of stuff going on, and he's not necessarily having conversations with anybody, so he can observe.
I wish I knew.
I couldn't figure that out. He has the best facial expressions. So we're entering spoiler territory here.
Yeah. I'm not even going to like sound the alarm, but because it's
No.
like you can learn everything that there is about this movie and still be surprised just by watching it.
Oh, absolutely. You need to watch it. And if for nothing else, this guy's expressions when Richard Roundtree meets his demise.
Yeah.
This mime is watching it and has the best expressions. He goes through the range of emotions within a minute, from astonishment to awe to fear to mourning.
Yeah.
He's all over the spectrum there.
It's amazing.
Oh, wonderful. Like, the movie is worth watching for so many reasons, but
that dude comes in like at the very end. He's not even a character we've seen before.
I know, that's why that was the thing. I was like, wait a second, did I miss this guy? When did we find out who this guy is? When was the scene where they were like, okay, you're going to go undercover as a street performer up by this thing? And
yeah. Well, let's quickly talk about some of the deaths that happen because of Q. You know, clearly a lot of people that are getting flung off of rooftops and, whatever the scaffolding is that like window washers are on and things like that.
yeah.
And, we have the sunbather. We have the dude who's on a rooftop with like 3 women, one of whom is doing like 60 push-ups. And he is just up there being like, oh, we just came here for you to do push-ups. And then he like goes into a pool and then Q swoops him up
Yeah.
and, does whatever he does.
Yeah.
Richard Roundtree, who just goes like flying through the air pretty much. It's amazing.
Yep.
It's so much fun. There is also a moment when Q is kind of getting shot down by the cops, where there's this aerial shot. It's like a bird's eye shot of people like running through the streets, because people are finally seeing Q like really for the first time. And so there's people just running through the streets. There's a dude that's just like doing like a barrel roll along the street. I didn't even clock it until like my 3rd time watching it.
Okay.
And I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah, I definitely need to go back and watch it again.
It's so much fun.
There seems to be so much in this movie to find, so that every time you watch it, there's something new. It's sounds
glorious.
like a tremendously made film. No.
It's well, I feel like it's a perfectly made film for what it is.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It hits the right balance to be bad but good, and it's like, yeah, that everyone's just working hard to make a fun movie.
Yeah.
So everything just kind of works. It all just kind of works. The random stuff, I would say the not random stuff, but it's all kind of
Right.
like, yeah, like you don't need to that. I guess that's the thing is, if you go into this movie and you're trying to understand the logic of everything, this is not the movie for you.
No, you just go along for the ride.
It's Q the Winged Serpent. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all you need to know.
So something that I didn't see in any of the, whatever, IMDb trivia, Wikipedia, whatever, and something that I wondered about is that this whole time they're talking about this creature that is this giant bird. And the costume that the person who you mentioned earlier, who's kind of behind all of this, is this like feathered costume. My suspicion though is that they did all of this stuff about having it be this like bird, because Quetzalcoatl is like an actual,
Well, right.
mythical or whatever kind of creature.
But isn't it kind of like a feathered? It's kind of like that,
Right.
That evolutionary step between dinosaurs and birds.
Yeah, and my assumption is that when they were finally working with like the stop motion animators to like create this creature, they were just like, yeah, we can't do feathers.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I don't know, make it just look do whatever you can. And it just looks like this weird, I don't know, skin lizard.
Like
Which is also why I think that it's called the Winged Serpent, like,
Right.
because it's never mentioned as like a referenced as like a serpent, but I feel like afterward they were just like, it kind of looks like a serpent. Let's use that word.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a small dragon.
Yeah.
It's not even like Pete's dragon was bigger from Disney.
Yeah.
That dragon was a bigger dragon. It's like it's kind of pterodactyl sized, but it's not a pterodactyl. I really don't care. I'm happy calling it a winged serpent.
Sure.
I mean, it has legs though. Does a serpent, isn't that like by definition a serpent does not have legs?
I mean, like a snake doesn't have legs, but I don't know if serpent and snake are necessarily always the same thing.
What else qualifies as a serpent?
I don't know. But Dan, there's something that I want to come back to with this. But first, I would really love to talk about what we do on this podcast, which is give our best attempts at ways to bring back these movies. But I do want to come back to the look of the serpent, because I have some things that have been running through my head, but it'll make sense later to bring it up. Okay.
Well, and looking by the way at kind of, just what comes up for the definition or meaning of serpent, it sounds like a large snake or, snake-like reptile.
Yeah.
Fits the bill. So Q definitely, I think serpent is the appropriate term.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sorry, go on. You were saying.
Yeah. So Dan, what would you do given the opportunity to bring back Q, the Winged Serpent?
Oh boy. Geez. There are so many, I had so many thoughts because okay, so first there's the whole monster verse that they're trying to do with the Monarch and Godzilla and Kong, and
right.
It doesn't necessarily seem to be taking off the way that I think they had planned. And I don't
know if they really planned for much of anything. Oh, you mean like the Universal monster dark universe thing?
No, I was thinking of more the Kong Skull Island,
right,
Godzilla, and then at Mothra, and I guess there's a few more of them in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what if you just threw Q into that world? But no, that's not what I want. I think what I would want, and by the way, I thought very specifically for this, if I went to the movies and was watching the trailers and all of a sudden a trailer started and it turned out to be a remake, a big budget, serious remake of Q, the Winged Serpent, Guillermo del Toro.
Right.
I feel like
Doug Jones as Q.
What's that?
Doug Jones as Q.
Oh, Doug Jones is, of course.
Yeah.
Naturally. I thought you were suggesting Duncan Jones, and I was like, okay, another interesting choice.
No, but that's, yeah, sure.
Another interesting choice as a filmmaker, but I'm like, I would want somebody who loved this movie, and it definitely feels like a Del Toro, like this is something he would have an appreciation for, but he can kind of take that B movie concept and really do it up well.
Right.
And it's it's not the same thing, but I would almost want there to be a remake of it that certainly pays tribute to the original.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to lose the fun of it.
Right.
But would want to, I would really love to, it would just be funny, to just see this movie, but the same plot, the same, I'll keep the dialogue.
Sure.
But
taken completely seriously and, given a proper budget.
Oh yeah, completely. And then to do a sequel. Because I would love for there to be a sequel to Q the Winged Serpent, but how not enough people know it for
Right.
it to have a sequel. And I don't know if it would make sense to have like a cool, like big budget sequel without the remake, but with the remake, you have to keep that fun. Like it really needs to be like, what if like, Warner Brothers Studios saw this and said to Larry Cohen, like, here's a blank check, remake that.
Yeah.
Use our resources, use our sound stages. Pee Wee Herman won't come riding across the middle, we promise.
Unfortunately.
Make the film that you were destined to make.
Yeah.
And I don't know who the cast would be, but I would definitely want there to be some like return. If this was 15, 20 years ago, I'd be like Steve Zahn as Quinn right away, who, by the way, I heard he has signed on to the Anaconda
Great
reimagining.
Yeah.
Was reading that earlier today. But yeah, I would really want to like find someone really like fun, like get some great TV actors for this. Maybe whoever made Cocaine Bear.
Elizabeth Banks.
Their next. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Elizabeth Banks. This could be an Elizabeth Banks.
And one of my favorite. So Cocaine Bear starts with a great scene with Matthew Rhys.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Matthew Rhys could be a really great Quinn.
Yes. Big fan of Matthew Rhys.
I love it when he gets like weird and twitchy and his roles are just like more cartoony.
Yeah.
Because he's so good at it and you can tell he's having fun.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Like Cocaine Bear kind of had the right vibe for a remake of this.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mention the Anaconda remake, sequel, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Because if I'm not mistaken, that is about people who are making a remake of Anaconda.
Like, and it's their friends, they're like childhood friends, and Anaconda was like their favorite movie.
Right.
And
so I had that kind of thought for Q, to like have people being like, there's this underappreciated weird movie, we're going to remake it and we're going to do it, in the way that it was most likely imagined to begin with. But I think that there are some, the more I thought about it, there are more issues with doing any kind of remake for Q, because I feel like such an important element of Q, the Winged Serpent, is the Chrysler Building. And I don't think that the world is ready yet for another like New York City things flying around buildings and wreaking havoc. I mean, there have been some, but I don't know. Something still feels a little weird to me about
you could also
iconic New York skyscrapers.
Well, you could move the setting.
I don't know. Where else could this work? Because I feel like New York is perfect.
London.
Really?
Imagine that poster with Big Ben.
Yeah, okay. That could be an interesting angle. Yeah, I mean, maybe there is a sequel where, Q is summoned by, some Brits.
I mean,
or
it's
like at the Burj Khalifa or something.
Well, okay.
That could be a really fun one.
Yeah, you could. I do like the idea of a bunch of people, like nowadays saying, like, looking at Q the Winged Serpent and be like, this movie is so great, and we could easily make it with like this,
right?
Spend a couple $100 on some decent software, maybe, and we could make this movie. Like, just shoot it on our phones.
They create an AI version of Michael Moriarty where it's Michael More AI.
Yes.
There we go.
Absolutely.
An actor who's, worked so much that no one ever talks about.
Right.
Yeah. And that's
No.
it's so great. Who also teamed up with Larry Cohen for This Stuff, a movie that is not very good, but I've always loved it. It's just one of those like B horror movie, kind of The Blob satires, essentially. And he's ridiculous in that in a completely different way. Not nearly as incredible of a performance as he does in Q.
This is a dynamic performance.
Dynamic is a great word for it, for sure.
Spectacular, yeah.
Yeah, I think that there would be a fun world in which there is like a Q prequel that has nothing to do with the Winged Serpent. It's really just about Quinn.
Oh, that Q. Okay.
Right, because for better or worse, we get a lot of information about Quinn's upbringing,
This is
and
true.
we get the whole story, which I would have preferred not to have heard the way that he told it, about how he learned to play the piano, which is a very like racially insensitive telling of his experience. And so yeah, he's had an interesting past, but it's also the way that, like, you know, being wrongly accused and imprisoned for a crime that you didn't commit can shape your entire future. And for this particular guy, you know, maybe he wasn't so twitchy at the beginning, but like because of his experiences in prison and out of prison trying to get legit work, but having to resort to a life of petty crime, I think that there's a story there.
So this movie, the Q prequel would really be about the shortcomings and victims of the American justice system.
Absolutely, yes.
Whereas the, Q is just about the victims of a winged serpent.
Well, you know, Dan, the same week that I watched Q, the Winged Serpent, I also watched Nickel Boys and Sing Sing. So,
okay. Yeah, that's a trilogy right there.
Yeah. So it's really, they're all about the same thing, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course they are. Yeah. And fortunately I know what both of those films are about. So
both of those films, excellent.
I can imagine. Nickel Boys. I had started reading it, and I just didn't have the time or bandwidth or focus to really
it's pretty powerful
reading it.
It's, and then as a film, it's quite powerful. Sing Sing is absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend that. Hard left turn talking about Q to talking about those, but
well, yeah, I mean, of course, but still, hey, Coleman Domingo, put him in Q, the Winged Serpent. I think he'd be great in the David Carradine role. Yeah, absolutely. I like Coleman Domingo. I didn't really know. I hadn't really seen him in anything until Rustin, and I really liked him.
Right. So here's an interesting one. So Coleman Domingo was doing an interview or one of those like award season things where they get a lot of the like actors who are, getting all the recognition and everything, where they get them together and they're talking with each other. Yeah. And there's this great one with Kieran Culkin and Coleman Domingo, and they're talking about how much they would love to work together. Kieran Culkin would be such a great Quinn.
Dude, and I was watching A Real Pain earlier today.
Oh,
I
loved it.
I watched about, and I'm going to finish it. I just had to, at a certain point, turn it off and pay attention to what was happening with the rest of my family. But I watched about an hour of it, and really, really good. Really so liked it. And Kieran Culkin would probably be the ideal Quinn.
I think so too. He'd be such a great Quinn.
Oh, he sure would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about before we move along is going back to the look of Quetzalcoatl and how it doesn't look like a bird, and that's why they kind of maybe turned it into a serpent type thing in the title alone. But what it actually kind of reminded me of is the baby from Eraserhead.
Oh,
The like just kind of like slimy gray.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yes.
and of course, this is the week where we just lost the great director David Lynch,
Yeah. Wow.
who I know we both
It just
love the work of and personality.
hugely influential
Yeah.
and just, personal, like on a personal level, just, getting into his films in
Yeah.
college. The only one of his films I got to see in the theater was Lost Highway.
Okay.
But seeing, just kind of going through his work, and Eraserhead is one that I need to go back and watch again. But there are like Eraserhead has you make that reference, and I know exactly what you're talking about because it has images that just imprint themselves on your brain, as do most of his films. I think,
and TV shows.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, Twin Peaks. Yeah. I mean, when we first moved to Seattle, that was one of my first, like, I need to check this out spots. The apartment building from Singles, but it was going to see the Snoqualmie Falls, so the waterfalls, and the Great Northern, the Salish Lodge. Sorry, not the Snoqualmie, the Salish Lodge, where we've stayed a few times. But going and eating at the Double R Diner.
Sure. Yeah. Tweeds, is that what it's called? Yeah.
Tweeds. But I will always call it the Double R.
No, of course.
So to have, just, and like his contributions, his transcendental meditation,
right?
The way that he has given people careers and seen things in performers that other filmmakers did. And I'm talking about both from like Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern,
right,
to taking an actress like Ann Miller and giving her that role in Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
That, just really gave, showcased somebody who had been a big star, but hadn't been in some time.
Right.
And
I also love the way that he supports the people around him. And there's that great photo that goes around where he's like sitting on like a lawn chair with like a cow, and it's like a big sign that's just like about Laura Dern.
Laura Dern, like for Inland Empire, I think it was. Yeah.
And it's like, that's so you don't see that ever. That is an incredible move from just an amazing individual.
He just seemed to be somebody who saw the things in the world and celebrated the things in the world that other people overlook, whether by choice or just by, hey, that's a small detail I didn't notice, like the guy doing the barrel roll down the streets of New York, where David Lynch is just recognizing these things and celebrating them, whether it's in his films or in the videos he would make. His LA weather.
When I lived in Los Angeles and the radio station Indie 103.1 existed, the way that he would do the weather every morning, it's very still. I loved the way that he would say, he'd just call in and do the weather. He's not a meteorologist, he's David Lynch, but it's the most LA thing ever.
And it was just something he wanted to do, and it brought him.
Timothy Oliphant did the sports. David Lynch did the weather. You had Jonesy's Jukebox from Sex Pistols.
Okay,
it was so great. That radio station. Ooh, I miss that. There's nothing else like it.
The golden age.
Yeah. So anyway, David Lynch. I don't think that he had a single enemy in the world. He, for me, this was one of those deaths where it hit me kind of like when David Bowie died, where it's just like, oh, I never imagined that this person wouldn't be around, and what an incredible influence this person was.
And much like Bowie and Prince, he's somebody who it's like, I can't think of them as dying. I can only think of them as like ascending.
Right. Yeah.
It's all that feels right. And it also like the timing of all of those deaths around, first the 2016 election. And now as we're on the...
Okay, well, now you're getting into conspiracy theory territory.
No, not conspiracy theory, but just the kind of like, just kind of like they were too good for this world.
Oh, yeah. Well, we certainly love David Lynch. I can't wait to talk about one of his movies in the future, but what we are doing in this series of episodes this season is we are going up the alphabet and then back down again. That's 52 episodes covering an entire year. Q, The Winged Serpent, of course, is our Q movie, and I'm so glad that we did that. Dan, before you talk about R, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube to see the videos or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Please rate and review the show, especially on Apple Podcasts. It goes a long way to get it in front of more ears and eyes. If we're talking YouTube, we've had some great comments on YouTube videos in the past, and I love to see those coming in. So keep doing that. Email us ruinchildhoodspot@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about ways to bring back Q, the Winged Serpent, or any of the other movies that we've talked about or might talk about. And Dan, R is our next letter. What is our R movie?
Are you ready to rumble? 2000's Ready to Rumble, directed by Brian Robbins, starring Scott Conn, David Arquette, Oliver Platt, Joe Pantoliano, Bill Goldberg, Diamond Dallas Page, Macho Man Randy Savage, Billy Kidman, Perry Saturn, and Sting, not the singer, the wrestler.
Yes. I don't think that you've mentioned a single woman that's in this movie.
And Rose McGowan and Kathleen Freeman.
Yes.
And I think those are
Charlotte Rae.
Charlotte Rae. Oh, wow. Okay.
Charlotte Rae. Mm-hmm.
Did
you mention Oliver Platt is in it?
I did mention Oliver Platt.
Okay, I couldn't remember. You mentioned so many other people. I think I
definitely mentioned Oliver Platt, but yes, and Rose McGowan, Sharmell Huffman,
Ahmet Zappa.
Yeah, pops up in there. What's his face? Like, is it Chris Owen? Yes,
who we talk about a lot of this podcast for some reason.
I'm like, yeah, I saw him, and I'm like, yes, we've talked about him
recently.
Yes,
yeah,
yeah. And I didn't even mention a very brief background appearance from John Cena.
That is true.
I think you can see him. In fact,
I saw him. We'll talk about that more on the next episode. That's our R episode. Dan, I feel like I talked for like 80% of our Q episode, and I imagine you'll talk for 80% of our R episode because you are the wrestling guy.
John, you're gonna have light lifting.
There might have to be times where I have to like tag you out.
This is not tag team, John. This is a rumble, and I'll explain the rules on the night. No, it's very different. I will explain the rules.
Okay, great.
Okay, and yep, you are just going to have to, as the great one, The Rock says, know your role and shut your mouth.
Ooh, all right, Dan. Well, while you are being carried away by Q, the Winged Serpent, as you are sunbathing atop a building, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.